nursing?
Um, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
So, like my current role, I had never been one to do like public speaking for sure. And when I took this role, they said, oh, by the way, you're not just doing like your unit stuff, you're now going to lead one of our monthly meetings. And I was like, excuse me? Like, I have to speak in front of people and leaders above me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to sound so dumb. I'm not going to know what I'm talking about. Um, but through coaching and through mentorship with another coworker who really took me under her wing, I feel like I have grown significantly. I speak up in a lot of meetings now. Um, I present at a lot of different places. I get chosen to do things because I am one of those people that will speak up freely in meetings. I'm also not afraid to speak up for other people. Um, and maybe that's one of my challenges is sometimes I don't know when to not speak up um, because I feel very passionate if I feel like it's a patient concern or patient safety issue or even a staff safety issue. I'm going to speak up on behalf of them. So sometimes I've got to learn when and where it's appropriate to speak up and who to speak up to rather than just talking randomly.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would you consider the scariest thing about studying and practicing in your field?
Um, for me, it's knowing one that I potentially hold somebody's life in my hands for sure. Because as a bedside nurse, you have to know what medications you're giving. You have to understand different body processes. You have to know how to recognize when your patient is deteriorating or else something's going to happen to your patient. And I don't think anyone gets into healthcare intentionally with the desire to harm a patient or another human being. I think we all enter this field to help in some way, shape, or form. Um, but that is kind of the scary part of it is if you don't know what you're doing, you can be dangerous. Um, and not only that, you could potentially lose the license that you have worked so hard to get
Yeah.
and maintain. So I always try to tell younger nurses, newer nurses, or people that I notice maybe just aren't really thinking their actions through. I kind of like pull them aside and really talk to them about that because I always like to have the conversation like, what if that was your mom in the room? Is this the care that you would want your mom to receive or your dad or your sister, whoever it may be? My mom actually was just a patient here. And luckily, I have faith in my staff here, and they took wonderful care of her, and she had nothing but great things to say. Um, but that's the scariest part. And
Mhm.
when something like that does happen and you get to witness it, it's even scarier.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the unique things about the healthcare field in itself. It's like such a rewarding experience, and
Yes,
it's really cool to see like that you're the one that helped this person.
yes. And they remember you. I will say, without a shadow of a doubt, they remember you. They will write you cards. They will acknowledge you we do surveys post discharge. They will acknowledge you. Something that Northside specifically does is we have these little, we call them kudos cards, where they can write staff kudos and we post them up on a board and we give a copy to the employees. And it just basically says what that staff member did that made an imprint on that patient or that visitor or that family member, or even a fellow staff member. Um, so we really like to get that recognition out to staff, but you remember those patients. Um, One in particular for me is my very first COVID patient. When COVID first hit, the first patient I ever took care of from COVID, still in contact with. He's doing very well. Um, Wrote me a very nice card. Um, I had him consecutively for 3 days. And on that third day, he didn't do well. And he ended up going to the intensive care unit. And
Mhm.
I was very concerned that he was not going to make it out of this building. And he did. And he remembered me because I advocated for him. So those patients really stick with you. I even remember like my long-term care patients. Um, there was one in particular who requested myself and another nurse aide come be by his side as he passed because we were like family to him.
Mhm.
Find those connections and they're so valuable and they so greatly outweigh any rough day that you have that it's worth it.
Yeah. And I mean, for most patients that come in, this part is like probably one of the worst times of their life. So any sort of help or assistance from the staff, I'm sure, is deeply appreciated.
Yes, a lot of these patients come in and they're scared and
Yeah.
they don't know what's going on. And even when you try to explain different things to them because of how scared and how anxious they are, they
Mhm.
don't fully comprehend it. So even just sitting down and getting on their eye level to talk to them means so much and makes such an impact to them
Yeah.
that most people we genuinely just like look over that in our regular day-to-day lives, but when these patients are in here in the hospital, that just means so much more to them.
Mhm. And we actually have a question from one of our members who is asking that during COVID, there was a severe shortage of nurses. So how did you deal with that?
It was rough for sure. I worked during COVID, I worked on the progressive care unit.
Mhm.
So it was the patients that were too stable for ICU and not stable enough for a med surge floor.
Yeah.
Um, Really, what got us through COVID was the team. We had to be an effective team and we had to be there to support one another and to support these patients, or none of us would have made it out of the COVID surge. Um, we are still recovering from the shortage of nurses. I will say it's definitely getting better. I can say that for sure.
Mhm.
Because that's one of my jobs now is hiring and recruitment. Um, and I will say it has come back. There's still certain people that are doing the whole traveling nurse thing, looking for the best option. I think those people just haven't found their homes yet. I think once you find a place where you feel a part of a team and a part of something that is making such an impact, that's where you end up staying. And for a lot of us that worked through COVID, it was our coworkers that got us through it.
Mhm. So definitely that bond you had with all of your staff members through that very difficult time.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, I remember earlier we were talking about how before you wanted to get into like medicine, you wanted to be a graphic designer. What made you switch to do medicine?
I was really, I knew like the food industry wasn't my thing after working in that little rinky-dink pizza shop. But I was also in my first years of like prereqs in college, just like English and history and social sociology and stuff like that. Still trying to like figure out my course. And the people I ended up meeting along the way were nursing majors or doing their prereqs to get into the nursing program. And I just thought they were all such wonderful people. And they were like, oh no, you have to do it. Like you have to try, like you have to apply to get into the nursing program. You're smart enough, kind of thing. And those people that encourage you and support you are the ones that really pushed me to follow that and pursue it.
Mhm.
So, what specific aspects of your career are most important to remember before someone makes a decision, like a student makes a decision about studying? Are there any characteristics that they may need to have or anything like that?
I think for sure you have to like learning because it is a continuous aspect of all types of healthcare for sure. You have to be somebody that is always looking for wanting to know something more, like being inquisitive and wanting to see different things, experience different things. you also have to be, and I find this kind of funny because normally I wouldn't really consider myself a people person. Um, but I don't know what happens, but when I cross that threshold of this hospital door, I am very much a people person. I have gotten pretty good at networking, not only working with patients, but meeting new people within the organization, and getting to know them on a personal level as well as a professional level. Um, I think you have to be willing to work with different types of personalities for sure. Not everybody has the same personality. You can't approach one person the same way you can another person. Different people like different types of feedback. So you have to be open minded for sure. You have to be open to learning different cultures, because that's a huge part of patient care, um, because our different cultures have different needs, whether it's food needs or personal care. We have certain ethnicities that don't want male caregivers or don't want a female caregiver caring for a male patient. And you have to be understanding and you can't get upset about those kinds of things. So, and sometimes in healthcare, you have to have a little bit of a thicker skin. um, like you guys were saying earlier, these patients come in and they're just in a very vulnerable state, and some of them do tend to lash out, and it's just you have to take a step back and be like, okay, a patient is scared. They just got some very bad news, but what can I do to relieve that stress, that fear, that anxiety? And I can't take that personally. I have to be able to understand what's going on in their shoes.
So we actually have a membership question. What do you enjoy most about your work?
Right now, in the job that I have currently, um, I don't get to do as much patient care as I would like to do. But what I do get to do is work with the younger nurses, the newer nurses. A lot of my staff like to joke around and say I'm the person with all the answers. I'm like the encyclopedia of Northside. Um, and it's just because I've been here so long and I've really ingrained myself in the culture and in the standards and the expectations of the organization, that I know how to answer a lot of their questions, or I know, because of the networking that I have done, I know who to reach out to get them their answer. So I love supporting my staff. It's probably the most joy that I get. Um, to be honest, I recently applied for a different position, um, for the benefit of my staff,
Mhm.
and the support and the encouragement that I got from my team and from other members across the organization showed me that I was a valued member of the team. Um, and it really impacted me. Um, and then it made me sad when they found out I didn't get a certain job, because they actually were so scared that I was going to leave because I didn't get said job. And I was like, I'm not leaving you guys. Like, we're hanging in, we're in this together. Like, I'm your person. I'm still going to be here. I'm going to support you through this. We will get through anything. Like, if I'm hanging on, y'all got to hang on. So they were so supportive of me, but they also were also concerned about me. And it just genuinely showed me that my team like really cares about me personally. So
And I remember you were saying earlier how like your first nursing school experience wasn't the best one, and that you're
yeah,
trying really hard to make sure that any new nurses come in are feeling accepted and like they're open to any questions they may have. And I think you're doing a really good job of that.
yeah. They always come to me and they're like, I have a dumb question. And I'm like, there are no dumb questions in nursing. Like, you just can't possibly know everything you need to know in
Yeah.
nursing. Um, Even with all the experience that I have, I don't know everything.
Mhm.
There's no way to possibly know everything. It's just something you learn, or you experience it enough times, or you experience it in a certain way that it just clicks with you and it stays with you.
Mhm.
So
We have another member question, and they're asking, how much schooling did you have to do to go through to go through to becoming a nurse?
So I have my bachelor's degree. So it took roughly 4 to 5 years. Took me a little bit longer because I took that first year to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I actually ended up failing out of that first program. So I ended up being in college for 6 years, so a little bit longer than most. But a typical bachelor's program takes about 4 years. There's also associate's degrees that take 18 months to 2 years. There's also LPN, licensed practical nursing schools, and those take about 18 months as well. And the nice thing about all of those is if you do start at LPN or the associate's degree, there are several what we call bridge programs. So they don't make you redo a bunch of courses you've already done. They take your previous schooling and they take that into account, and then they tweak your next schooling to accommodate what you need to achieve that next degree.
Mhm. So it's like like you were saying earlier, there are definitely different paths you can take. There's not like one set thing. I'm sure me specifically, when I was younger, I did have like this thought that like a nurse was just like you were saying, like by a patient's bedside,
Mhm.
and that's kind of all they did. But you really helped us like understand that there are so many facets to nursing.
Yeah. And something that I didn't see until I came to Northside is we have a specific program, and it's a nurse externship.
Mhm.
And as soon as you apply and get into a nursing school, you can become a nurse extern student. So basically, it's extra time on the floor to come into the hospital setting and learn and shadow a nurse and shadow a tech and get to see the patient care aspect side of things and get more exposure. And to me, being a tech before I became a nurse put me leaps ahead of my peers that didn't. And I highly encourage anybody that is interested in becoming a nurse that you either become a nurse aide first or you do something like a nurse externship,
Mhm.
because then what happens is once you move from that nurse extern grad or student, you move to a nurse extern grad, which means you've graduated nursing school. Now you're just waiting to pass your board. And then 99% of the time here at Northside, when you move from a nurse extern grad and you want to get into one of our residency programs, you're guaranteed a spot somewhere.
Well,
It may not be your initial specialty, but you will get a spot at Northside.
and this nurse externship, that's a opportunity for nursing students.
Yes,
That's great.
it is.
Yeah.
And you get paid for it, which is even better.
Yeah.
So, it is paid.
So for high schoolers, are there any like opportunities that you would recommend that they take?
I think one of you said earlier that Ann and the Explorers. We do have actually, I think, 2 or 3 high school students currently that spend about 2 hours in the mornings shadowing the nurses right now, just to kind of get a feel if nursing is really what they want to do. And I will say we have had those high school students be like, "This is so wonderful. Thank you so much. Like, this has been such a joy. Like, I've learned so much." And they do end up going on and going into a nursing program after high school.
Yeah. So just like exposure is kind of like what people need to see what they want to do in the future.
Right.
And I know a lot of high school students are like kind of like afraid to ask. Would you recommend just going up front and asking about shadowing in a certain office, and or just like how would you go about that? Would we like go up front and ask?
For high school students, I think we would have to work with Anne. That's kind of her specialty. But I will say Northside is all about connecting with the high schools in this area and supporting that initiative. So I don't see any potential pushback for that. I just think they would have to work out an agreement with your school to get that to be something that you guys could do. Because I know there are high school students on almost every single floor of this hospital right now doing that shadowing opportunity. So,
Yeah. We have one of our members asking, do you have sort of like an it moment in your career where you knew that this is what you wanted to do and that you were meant to do this?
um, I feel like I've had several of those moments. Um, I definitely think one of those was when I worked in long term care and I was a nurse's aide, and I really connected with several different patients, as well as with the staff nurses and the patients' families. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty good at this. Like, okay, I'm really going to give this a shot. And then when I entered into nursing, um, one of my it moments um, was when a younger nurse came to me and was like, I can't thank you enough for precepting me and teaching me all the things that you have taught me. Like, I could have never expected to be at this point coming off orientation. Like, I actually feel ready, I feel good. Um, so, leading that next group of nurses to be successful. Um, and then patient wise, I've had so many, so many encounters with all different types of patients. Um, I remember this one little lady. She was so sweet, and initially she came in. She really wasn't that sick, but unfortunately took a turn for the worse in the hospital,
Mhm.
and ended up bouncing back in between us and ICU at the time. Um, and she, the one day she looked at me and she was like, "I don't think I'm making it out of here." And I looked at her and I was like, I am going to do everything that I can to make sure you do get out of here. I said, you may not go home right away, but we will work on getting you there. You may have to go to a rehab to get stronger first, but I will do everything I can. And even when I wasn't her nurse, I would stop by and check on her.
Mhm.
And that meant the world to that patient. And she was like, oh my God, you're right. I'm going out today. I'm in this wheelchair. I'm going out. I'm going home with rehab, coming to my house. So when you have things like that and experiences like that, you really have that moment click where you're like, this is what I needed.
Mhm.
Um, Another moment that I had, um, I kind of touched on it earlier, was all that support and encouragement and emotions from staff members about that job that I didn't per se get. But that to me spoke to me as a leader. I'm clearly doing something right as a leader for them to not only encourage me, um, because I will tell you, one of the people that encouraged me, we did not start out on the best foot when she started here. Our relationship was very rocky when she first got to Northside. She came from another organization. Um, Little did I know that she was feeling the stressors of our charting system. Um, but through spending time with her and getting to know her on a personal level, we have developed that rapport, and she's a straight shooter. She's not going to sugarcoat something. She's not going to tell people what they want to hear. She tells you what she really thinks. So when she gave me her backing and her support, and then when I watched her get visibly upset because she was afraid I was going to leave her, that to me told me I was doing a good job leading my nursing staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what's the piece of advice that you would give for someone who's considering a career in nursing?
Oh, there are so many things.
Yeah.
Um, you're going to have bad days, but they will never outweigh your good days. And if you if you enter nursing, if you are like a new grad coming in and you don't feel supported or you don't mesh well with who they've picked as your preceptor, I would empower you to speak up. And if the first person you go to doesn't listen, you go to the next person and you keep going until you feel like somebody listens to you.
Mhm. And I'm sure for the most part, a lot of people are like the nursing staff and everyone is trying to help you and they're trying to make sure that you get to like the good point in your life and a good point in your career.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I will say a lot of our preceptors, those people that train people to be on their own, they train them, they watch over them during orientation, and then even after they get off orientation, they are checking on them, whether it's a text, hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in a few shifts. Or if it's, hey, let's have lunch together because we haven't seen each other. Or maybe they realize that the person that they oriented is having a really rough day. They will go over and they will say, hey, what can I do to help you? You look very busy. You look a little stressed. What can I take off of your plate to support you? They still do that even after orientation is done. Our staff just naturally kicks in and does that immediately.
So we had another question. What do you think makes a good healthcare professional?
Someone that is patient, not only with patients, patience with patients, patience with visitors, patience with fellow coworkers, fellow staff members. Patience with yourself is huge because, like I said time and time again tonight, you're not going to know everything, especially right out of the gate. It takes time and it takes a lot of learning and a lot of opportunity for you to develop those skills, that critical thinking, that knowledge base. Somebody that is kind, somebody that is compassionate, somebody that is a good listener, um, somebody that wants to do better, not just for themselves, but for others.
Mm-hmm.
So you say that everyone has. Oh, I'm sorry. So you say that everyone has their own like journey through the whole process. It's like not comparing yourself to others. It's important to focus on yourself.
Correct. The road that I take may not be the same as you, and we may end up in the same destination. I started here at Northside with a group of 5 other girls, and we all started on the same med surge floor, and now we are all in different departments. We are all at different campuses. We are all doing different things. One of us has left healthcare completely. She just figured out it wasn't her thing. One of them is an IV nurse. One of them she does my job role, but at a different hospital within our system. Another one went into the float pool. You enter at different tracks. You come to a Y in the road, and sometimes those Ys come up very abruptly, and you have to figure out, okay, which way am I gonna go down this road? And your friends may not go down that road with you, but I encourage everybody to take whatever their heart is telling them, because that is the beauty of nursing, is that you can go anywhere. And even if you go somewhere and you don't like it, you don't necessarily have to backtrack. You could start down another new road and another new path. That's the great thing about nursing and about healthcare.
And I think that especially like all of our members watching today, they have the time. They have the time to figure out kind of what they want to do. And even when they get into like college or like any further education they want to do, they still have the time to figure out what specifically they want. And well, the only way to do that is just by exposing yourself to different things and trying out different things.
And that's something you have to have as a healthcare worker as well.
Mm-hmm.
Wanting to see those new opportunities and wanting to be open to new opportunities. If you don't do that, you're closing yourself off to a whole bunch of different worlds of opportunity and different worlds of nursing that you may have never known have existed.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Ms. Katie. I really appreciate it, and thank you for taking your time.
Oh, no problem. It's been a pleasure. I hope I answered all your questions. I hope everyone chooses to become a nurse now. So
You definitely made a really good argument for that.
thank you.
So thank you to all of our members that joined, and thank you for making the conversation interactive and helping out.
We're going to leave the QR code for attendance up for another 30 seconds. Remember, to get the credit, you must complete the form by September 24th. This video will be posted on our YouTube channel. Thank you guys, and have a good night.